Welcome in. So I am Jaeger and here for another video about Azerbaijan and Armenia. And the first thing I want to cover before we get to the debate between the two leaders of the two countries is just kind of the way that refugees kind of left this region. So you had about 300,660 Armenian refugees that left Azerbaijan and went to Armenia, as well as 40,000 for the Nagorno-Karabakh region that went into Armenia. For Azerbaijan, 180,000 from Armenia into Azerbaijan, and 305,000 from, well, kind of the conflicted region, the Nagorno-Karabakh, the land between there into Azerbaijan, and then 45,000 into Azerbaijan. So there were refugees moving back and forth as a result of this conflict. And I am looking for people, whether they're on the Azerbaijan side of things or the Armenia side of things, to just kind of have a discussion, kind of get their viewpoint on what the conflict is, maybe some resolutions for the conflict. But today we're just going to cover. Oh, if you're interested in doing kind of some sort of dialogue podcast format about this topic, if you're on either side, just shoot me up or hit me up on Twitter at Jaeger de Pedo, and we will get in touch and we'll make it happen. So, but today, like I said, I have the video, and then this happened in Munich in February of this year. On the right, you have Azerbaijan President, and I'm probably going to butcher both of these guys' names, Ilham Aliyev. And on the left, you have Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan. And just kind of for the first looks of it, the president of Azerbaijan, Aliyev, kind of looks like a mafia boss. And I get like Lucky Number 11 vibes from him. Like, have you ever seen Lucky Number 11? He reminds me of the Jewish crime boss in there, actually, which is just kind of interesting. Maybe it's the mustache, maybe it's his posture. And then the Armenian president, Nikol Pashinyan, kind of looks like a Batman villain. Kind of more similar, actually, to like the Penguin. Or he also has kind of a mafia boss kind of persona around him, but in kind of a more laid back kind of way. His posture is really laid back, and the Azerbaijan president's more kind of aggressive. So, but this happened at Munich, the Munich Security Conference, in February 15th of this year. So, before the conflict, before the fighting, they met to discuss the Nagorno-Karabakh region. And so we'll go ahead, we'll start with the video, we'll stop it a few times at just different points that they make throughout the video.
Welcome to the session, conversation on Nagorno-Karabakh. My name is Celeste Wallander. I am privileged to serve as moderator for this panel. And thank you for the assistance from the audience in my duties. I am going to start by inviting our esteemed guests to offer some initial thoughts on the challenges and opportunities.
The most nervous person on there is the moderator for the debate. She is completely nervous. The other two, the president and the prime minister, they're nervous, but nowhere near the level that she is.
Each sees in the challenge of resolving the dispute over Nagorno-Karabakh. And then we will have time for some questions and some further discussion. Our guests today are President Ilham Aliyev of Azerbaijan and Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan of Armenia. The two leaders are at the heart of something that the Munich Security Conference has always sought to speak to and to help advance.
Okay, so I haven't seen any of them speak, but I'm gonna guess kind of just by the way they look, kind of their voice in this. So the president of Azerbaijan, I think, is going to have a deeper voice, and I think he's going to be a little bit boisterous, a little bit loud. And the president for her prime minister of Armenia, I think he's going to be soft spoken with kind of a higher pitch sound. And so that's just my thoughts before they get into speaking. Like I said, I haven't seen this before. So I'm going to go through and just stop it periodically and just give my thoughts and reaction while they are going through this debate.
Which is the peaceful resolution of disputes in the international system. And I'm really grateful to Chairman Ischinger for making sure that this issue it remains on the agenda and in the attention of the Munich Security Conference. With that, let me turn to President Aliyev and invite him to offer his thoughts on the challenges and opportunities.
Thank you.
Whoa. His voice is a lot different than what I expected. Very soft spoken and a lot higher pitched than what I thought he was going to sound like. That's kind of a shocker there.
First of all, I'd like to express gratitude to Chairman Ischinger for organizing this event. I told Mr. Ischinger just now that there was an opportunity to deliver the messages from Armenian and Azerbaijani leadership several years ago in Davos. And the predecessor of Mr. Pashinyan was supposed to attend, but last moment he canceled.
Shots fired. He was supposed to attend, but he canceled. And I imagine there's instances in the past where Azerbaijan has canceled as well. Like, this relationship has not been good. Like, they rarely speak, and it's really a great event that they get here and they get together and actually speak, because they generally don't. They generally don't have any foreign relations despite being neighbors.
Participation. So I'm glad that finally we get to the point, so we'll be able to deliver the messages and to answer the questions, which I think will be enough today. So first of all, on the resolution, in order to talk about how to resolve the conflict, first we need to go back and to look to the history of the issue. Nagorno-Karabakh is part of Azerbaijan.
He is very comfortable speaking English. Not saying it's like a first language, but he's definitely comfortable presenting his argument in English. And now he's going to get back to kind of Azerbaijan side of things about the Nagorno-Karabakh region and how they believe that it was robbed from them.
This is historical truth, and this is based on the international law norms. And territorial integrity of Azerbaijan is recognized by the whole world, and Nagorno-Karabakh is integrated part of our country. From historical point of view, back in 1805, the Khan of...
So what he said there is not really true about it being an integrated part of Azerbaijan. It's 95% ethnic Armenians. And so, like, it's not really integrated into Azerbaijan. It technically is owned by Azerbaijan. Like, that's who the country it lies in. But it's not really integrated into Azerbaijan society.
Karabakh, Ibrahim Khan, signed a treaty with general of Russian Empire, Tsitsanov. Under this treaty, Karabakh Khanate, Azerbaijani Karabakh Khanate, as an independent country, became under the rule of the Russian Empire. In that treaty was called Kürekçay Treaty. The text of this treaty is in internet. Nothing is said about Armenian population of Karabakh. Other treaties were signed in 1813 and 1828, Gulistan and Turkmenchai. Under these treaties, the rest part of Azerbaijan became part of Russian Empire, and also Dagestan, Georgia, and Armenia also. So this is a historical part of the issue. Then, during the period when Russian Empire collapsed and Georgian and Azerbaijani Democratic Republic were established, one of the first decrees of Azerbaijani Democratic Republic in 1918 was to transfer Yerevan from Azerbaijan to Armenia and to announce it a capital of Armenia. This is also a historical fact. If you
I think, I may have misspoke at the first of this. Like, his English is getting a little bit worse. He may have, like, practiced that first part, but it seems like it's getting a little bit worse. You can definitely tell that he doesn't really speak English as his primary language, and he's trying to communicate these thoughts, chooses words carefully to try to explain where he's coming from on this issue. And he's going through like historical treaties, going through some of the history that was this region. Now, there's been a ton of history throughout the years, and not all of it was Azerbaijan. There's the Persian Empire, there's the Ottoman Empire, the Byzantine Empire. Like, there's a lot of history, a lot of transfer of land ownership. So I'm not really sure this is the best argument to move forward, just because, like, if you go back further in history, then it was owned by somebody that was probably friendly to Armenians. Go before that, somebody friendly to Azerbaijanis. Like, this land has kind of traded hands throughout history, depending on which empire was ruling at the time. But he's building a case. He's building it saying, this is the reason why we own it, going through this selective history. Like I said, you go back further, it changes. So, but yeah, you go from the selective and kind of recent history, Azerbaijan has owned this land. You go past the recent history, then it's changed hands a bunch.
you give something to someone, that means that this something belonged to you. In 1921, the Caucasus Bureau of the Bolshevik Party made a decision to retain Nagorno-Karabakh within Azerbaijan, to retain and not to transfer, as some Armenian historians want to present. This is also a historical fact. And the other historical fact is that in 1923, the Azerbaijani Soviet Social Republic issued a decree on creation of Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous District inside Azerbaijan. So this is a history. And then in the end of 80s, Armenia launched an aggression against Azerbaijan. 300,000 Azerbaijanis were deported from the territory of Armenia. And then in the beginning of 90s, Armenia launched aggression already against Azerbaijan Republic. And as a result of that aggression, almost 20% of our territories are under occupation. And 1 million of Azerbaijanis became refugees and IDPs. Our people were subject of ethnic cleansing. And in 1992,
So, like, the ethnic cleansing argument from Azerbaijan side of things, as far as Armenia, is true, but it's also true the other way. Like, if you look at both of these countries, Azerbaijan has a little bit more of a minority population as far as religion and ethnic groups, but it's still 90% Azeri or Azerbaijani. Armenia is like 97% Armenian. So both sides, people ran away because if Armenians would have stayed in Azerbaijan, they wouldn't have had a good time. And if Azerbaijanis stayed in Armenia, they wouldn't have had a good time. So both sides are guilty in this as far as ethnic purge and ethnic cleansing of their countries. and they're really both a majority of one ethnic group. Azerbaijan, like I said, has a little bit more of ethnic minorities, but it's still 90% Azerbaijani. So it's not like they're a little bit better, but not that really integrated. They're still both basically ethno states.
Previous Armenian regime committed a war crime, genocide of Hojali. As a result, 600.
That Kujali event is absolutely horrific. It's one of the reasons why I struggle. Like, I know a lot of people like to say, well, I support Armenia, but I don't think they know of Kujali, where they raided a town that was had some Azeris. I think it had some Armenians too. Raided it at night, started shooting people, and as these people tried to escape into Azerbaijan, some of them ran towards a guard post posted by Armenia, and Armenia opened fire. 600 people were killed trying to escape the occupied territory of Nagorno-Karabakh. Like that, Kojali is absolutely awful. Just like the Armenian genocide is absolutely awful. Now, Azerbaijan did have a couple events on their side too. I think one was in Baku and one was in another region where they kind of kicked the Armenians out, but they didn't really stand on the border and shoot them while they were trying to cross back into Armenia. So, like, both sides in this have a really dirty history.
113 innocent civilians, among them 106 women and 63 children, were brutally killed. More than 10 countries recognize Nagorno-Karabakh as independent country. Coming to the international law issue, once again, Nagorno-Karabakh is part of Azerbaijan. United Nations Security Council adopted 4 resolutions demanding withdrawal of Armenian troops from the occupied territories. These resolutions are not resolved. Therefore, any solution which will be achieved as a result of peaceful negotiation must provide preservation of internationally recognized territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. I will now conclude in order not to use more time than it was planned. Thank you.
So that was pretty good on his side as far as like painting the picture. I'm going to go back again and say he's not extremely comfortable, but he's really comfortable speaking English. Like there was the bit in the middle where I was like kind of not sure, but his ability to grasp kind of English and make his points in English were very good and very well played on that. It may change later in the video, it may change my mind, but overall I felt he was able to deliver his point in English, which is probably second language. And he is a very like clear and concise speaker. And so I can see, even though he has dictatorial tendencies, why some of the people at Azerbaijan like him. So, all right, now we're going to go on to the Armenian speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for that overview. Mr. Prime Minister, I think we are ready to hear your views on this issue.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I was kind of right on him as far as the way he speaks. But yeah, the lady in here, she is by far the most nervous person in the room. I don't know if that's because of where she's from or whatever, but she is so nervous that it's obviously nervous. So she's kind of trying to fake a smile there. Now, looking at him and his posture, he looks laid back, he looks relaxed, kind of slouching a little bit. But yeah, his voice, I was right on his voice. That Ilham from Azerbaijan, I was way off, but I was on his voice.
I would ask President Aliyev not to go so far into history, because when Armenian King Tigran the Great was negotiating with Pomp.
yeah, he's really struggling in English. Like, really struggling. Now, I do think his argument is valid because if you go further back in history, each one's going to have some sort of claim to the land, which was when Ilham was speaking. I was like, that's not a great argument because of the history of the area. Like recent history, yeah, but going back further than that, like if you keep going back, it's just going to keep changing hands back and forth.
Roman military leader, there wasn't any country in the South Caucasus, in all around the world, named Azerbaijan. And so I don't think it is right way to go so far, because I could go even further and start from, for example, 400.
So we shouldn't go back in history because that's a bad argument. So I'm going to go back in history just to prove my point. Like, it's kind of contradictory. He's like, the history doesn't matter, but hey, let me tell you some of the history. So yeah, hopefully he doesn't misstep or misspeak because yeah, his English is very rough. The way he's speaking, yeah, it's definitely a second language, probably something he's learned in the last little while. But yeah, it's going to be very tough for him to convey his thoughts because English is so foreign to him.
400 years before Christ. But I wouldn't do that because I don't think it is right way to go. As far as Nagorno-Karabakh is concerned as like a country, I should say that I'm not agree with President Aliyev, because Caucasian Bureau decided to Karabakh to be a part of Azerbaijan, Armenia, I'm sorry. And after that decision, and
that was not a good slip up. That clip's gonna make the rounds. Like I said, I said I hope he doesn't slip up because his English is so poor. But yeah, he slipped up there. And I imagine that clip's going to make the rounds because he misspoke. But that's the worst kind of misspeak. Like, yeah, all you have to do is just cut that, and yeah, an awful misspeak there.
this was totally lawful decision. And after that, according to the personal initiative of Joseph Stalin, this decision was changed in the Moscow, and it was like a plot between Stalin, Lenin, and Ataturk.
See, that's not a good argument either. So, because they were all Soviet republics, they were underneath the Soviet Union, the Soviet Union could do whatever they liked. Like, I know that's one of the things that caused strife today is because the Soviet Union drew the lines, but they were under the Soviet Union. They were part of the Soviet Union. Their masters were the Russians. The Russians could do whatever they want in Armenia, nor Azerbaijan was going to do anything about it. So that is kind of a poor argument there. Is saying, well, the Soviets did this, and even though it's technically true, it's not really convincing anybody why you have a need to be there, especially since the United Nations Security Council said that it belongs to Azerbaijan, is asking Armenia to leave the area. So, like, yeah, he was criticizing Ilham for bringing up history, and now he's bringing up history. But yeah, I don't think that's a great argument. And then the Stalin, Lenin, Ataturk conspiracy, that's interesting as well. It's the George Soros deep state. Actually, deep state's a horrible joke there because, Azerbaijan's backed by Turkey, and Turkey's where the deep state came from. So yeah, that was a horrible joke. But the New World Order, you know what I'm kind of getting at? It's just kind of conspiratorial that Stalin, Lenin, and Ataturk conspired against Armenia. Like maybe, you could probably say Ataturk, but the Turks and the Russians weren't getting along at that time. So if they were going to conspire against you, and Armenia has been like Russia protected Armenia, it doesn't make much sense. I don't think there's much validity to the argument that he's making right here.
And Karabakh never been a part of independent state of Azerbaijan. And Karabakh was put into Azerbaijan only in the process of forming Soviet Union. And when we are speaking on the territorial integrity, we should decide about which country territorial integrity we are speaking. My question is, if Azerbaijan respected territorial integrity of Soviet Union, becoming independent country, as Azerbaijan left Soviet Union, in the same way, Nagorno-Karabakh left Soviet Union. You can say that I'm now speaking on a country which doesn't exist.
So that's an interesting point to bring up. So as far as leaving the Soviet Union, Nagorno-Karabakh was an autonomous region. It was technically within the lands of Azerbaijan, but they wanted to be kind of their own country. And I can see why Armenia wants them to be their own country, because it'd be like a second Armenia. It would be a North Armenia and a South Armenia. I get that as far as Armenia wanting that solution, because all the Azerbaijanis that used to live in that area were pushed out. Same thing about, brought up the issue earlier about all the Armenians that had to leave Azerbaijan and all the Azerbaijanis that had to leave in the Nagorno-Karabakh and Armenia. They kind of ethnically pushed out any minorities out of their states. And so that's why Armenia wants that. They want this to be an autonomous zone just because there's no Azerbaijanis left. And Azerbaijanis want to go in because their people have been pushed out of areas where they grew up. They haven't been back for 30 years. So that's kind of the root of kind of the conflict. But he does bring up that good point. Is well, let's just make it its own country. And as far as a solution, I think that's a decent one, because that would stop the fighting. But I don't think Azerbaijan would ever accept that solution.
Meaning Soviet Union. But the Soviet Republic, which contains Nagorno-Karabakh, also doesn't exist. There is no Soviet Republic, Soviet Socialist Republic of Azerbaijan. And that is true. And like Azerbaijan gained independence from Soviet Union, in the same way, Karabakh gained independence both from Soviet Union and from Soviet Azerbaijan. As far as Khojaly is concerned, in the mid-90s, former president of Azerbaijan, Ayaz Mutalibov, gave an interview to the Russian paper Argumenti I Fakti, saying that the provocation in Khojaly was organized by Azerbaijani opposition to tackle.
He just called a massacre a false flag, saying, well, it was Azerbaijanis doing it to themselves. That did not occur. They raided that area and started pushing people out and then shot them at the border. What he is saying here is conspiratorial, which goes along the lines. Now, Turkey's not involved in this, but Turkey denies the Armenian genocide. So does Azerbaijan, but Azerbaijan wasn't involved in the Armenian genocide. It was the Young Turks that came down into Armenia and tried to genocide the people. But yeah, this sort of denial of a massacre that happened is another one of the reasons why tensions are so high between the two, because they can't even agree when the other side is wrong or when themselves is wrong.
Him from the power. And this happened actually because as a result of that event, Ayaz Mutalipov was tackled from the post of president of Azerbaijan. About the UN Security Council documents. If we will, what was the general meaning of those documents? The general meaning of those documents was unconditionally and immediately ceasefire to stop any violence and stop military actions. And when we will see U.S. Security Council Resolution 884, we will see that they're written that Azerbaijan violated ceasefire, and as a result, Azerbaijan lost territories. And first of all, it's Azerbaijan that didn't keep the conditions of the Security Council.
So, what are you saying there about the 884 and Azerbaijan violating that? That is true. But what he's not saying is the other three Security Council decisions wanted Armenia to back out of the region, which Armenia didn't do. So, as you can kind of see, you can take a piece and you can kind of twist it to fit your narrative without seeing the whole narrative. And so that's kind of what he's doing here. Now, unfortunately for him in this situation, his English is pretty poor compared to Ilham with Azerbaijan. So he struggles to get his point across because English is a second language. It'd be great if there's a universal language that they both can communicate in that we can understand, but he's doing his best, but English is not his forte.
Document. And it is very important to state. But I don't think it is good way for Armenian and Azerbaijani leaders every time repeat the same thing. Unfortunately, within last 25, even 30 years, we are repeating every time the same things. And I'm afraid international community maybe somehow is tired hearing the same thing. And I think that we need to bring some new ideas. And I would like to say that when I became Prime Minister of Armenia through the non-violent Velvet People's Revolution, I understood that it isn't possible to solve 30 years lasting conflict with one or two steps. And I thought that for solving this problem, we need to have revolutions. And I started the process of micro revolutions. And in the next opportunity, when the floor would come to me, I will present you the role of micro revolutions in Nagorno-Karabakh negotiation process that I initiated. Thank you.
So just to recap on that first round, I mean his English is not very good. he is saying or attempting to say all the right things in this from the Armenian perspective. Everything he's saying is kind of right in lockstep as far as what I've seen. As far as Armenia present. Now, one of the issues, he's going to bring up the Velvet Revolution later, is Armenia doesn't want anything to change. They have Nagorno-Karabakh. It's armed military. They have their own country. So they would prefer the conflict stay frozen as it is because they benefit for it being frozen. Azerbaijan wants to return their people, something they've said for the last little while, something the UN agreements from the Security Council have said, is Armenia needs to back down so Azerbaijan can have back some of their old land, which was drawn up by the Soviets. But Armenia stayed there, stayed occupied, and violated some of the things, and then the conflict spur every once in a while. But really, like him saying, oh, we want to change, we want to do something different. I don't believe that. I believe they like the way it is. They just don't want Azerbaijan to attack them or provoke them to attack Azerbaijan. So Armenia in this last little skirmish was the initial aggressor, which is interesting because they have no reason to be. The Yavuz area is of importance to Azerbaijan because it gets closer to their oil pipeline into Europe. And it may have just been a misstep or whatever, but they killed 11 Azerbaijanis and 4 to 5 Armenians were killed as well. But Armenia instigated that for some reason. I don't know if it's COVID. I don't know if it's anything. I don't know why they would instigate because they pretty much have everything they already want right now. So it's an interesting dynamic because Azerbaijan definitely has the motive to be more aggressive, but Armenia was aggressive in this recent clash.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Before we were, that is a welcome topic of conversation. I thought as a logical follow-up to the historical background that each of you has offered to the group, and as a political scientist, I always want to get on to the solution. I feel like historians help us understand, but they don't help us always understand how to move forward. Sorry for any historians in the room. What I wanted to get your thoughts on, and I'll start with you, Mr. Prime Minister. What if you're here in a?
He has to look like, oh shit, not me again. I have to speak English again. Like, yeah, he's looking more comfortable, but as soon as he turned to him like you first, his look was like, oh shit. Now I have to talk about a solution, and then he gets to talk. But the Azerbaijan president, he looks calm. He knows what he's going to say and everything. But the Armenian guy, he looked very uncomfortable when she turned to him. So we'll see how this plays out in round 2.
International audience, many experienced negotiators, many who have worked on this challenge for some 30 years and trying to support a peaceful resolution of the dispute. What is the one thing you would want to see from the international community to help you advance what you think is an equitable, peaceful solution to the challenge of Nagorno-Karabakh? And maybe about 2-minute answer.
Yes,
I'll turn to the
there
president.
is very concrete thing that international community could do. It make it clear that there is no any military solution for Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. There is no any military solution, and international community should make it strongly and very clear. If someone
Now, the reason why Armenia doesn't want to get into a military conflict with Azerbaijan is the Azerbaijan budget for a military conflict, especially if Turkey gets involved. If Turkey gets involved, Armenia is done. But Azerbaijan spends as much in their military as Armenia's overall budget. Even though Armenia has the high ground, they do not want to get into a military conflict with Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan will suffer more losses, but eventually, from all their high tech weaponry, Azerbaijan would win. It would be a extremely bloody conflict because, like I said, Azerbaijan does not have the high ground. So if they start fighting in the mountains, they can take a page out of the Americans' book and how difficult Afghanistan was against the Taliban. It is absolutely miserable fighting in mountains, especially when the people you're fighting know the mountains better than what you do. So yeah, he definitely doesn't want a military conflict because Azerbaijan can buy all the high grade weaponry that they would like to fight this battle, and Armenia cannot.
thinks otherwise, saying that there is military solution for Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, I guess that people of Nagorno-Karabakh conflict would answer. In that case, we can say that this conflict already solved. So, but I think we need to sustainable peace, and Armenia, and I'm not represent Nagorno-Karabakh in negotiation process, but I know that Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh are ready to put real efforts to create in our region sustainable peace. And as a prime minister of Armenia, I perceive this situation not only my responsibility for security of my country, but I understand my responsibility for regional security and for global security. And I invite President Aliyev to perceive this situation as our mutual task to create sustainable peace and stability, and perceive this situation not only an issue of our national agenda, but also an agenda of global and regional security, and our duty and our responsibility to bring our effort, our input to the global security. And I would assure you and that Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh are ready for that.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
So, that'll sell what he was just saying, but at the same time, he said absolutely nothing. He's saying, "Well, come with us and negotiate." And I guess he's kind of in a roundabout way saying, "Well, I'm not going to speak for Nagorno Karabakh, but bring all three of us to the table, or yeah, bring yourself and the other two to the table. Bring all three to the table, and we can hash out a solution." But he didn't really go into what that solution would be, and I imagine from some of his earlier comments, that solution would be an autonomous republic of Nagorno Karabakh, which Azerbaijan, I think, is going to reject all day.
Those were very helpful, and thank you for sharing your priorities with us. President Aliyev, may I ask you the same question? You are very experienced in negotiating this. You've dealt with many people in this room on the issue, but help us understand, what do you think is the most important at this moment in history for the international community to do to help you advance what you think is an equitable and peaceful resolution to the conflict?
First of all, I'd like to make one comment. I'm absolutely sure that we came here to tell the truth. And what I said in my introductory remarks is 100% truth, which can be easily checked right now. Just enter the internet, find those documents which I referred to, and you will understand who is telling truth and who is not. Second comment, I'd like also to clarify situation.
Shots fired. He said, "You know what? Just check the truth because my opponent's lying." That's really what he just said. My opponent's lying. Check the truth. I'm right. He's wrong. Nana nana boo boo. Stick your head doo doo. Is essentially what he just said. So we'll see what he has to get to say. But yeah, it's been a while since he spoke, and he comes out firing like that.
Which in Armenia, unfortunately, became a kind of a attempt to find an excuse of what they've done in Khojaly. President Ayaz Mutalibov, he is in good health and he lives in Baku. Maybe Armenian side doesn't know it. Recently and many times said that he never said that Khojaly genocide was organized by Azerbaijanis. This is, as it is said today, it's a fake news which was invented by...
As it is said today, fake news. The last thing I thought I'd hear out of this debate. Fake news. Should play a bingo card when I watch these and just check off things, but I don't think I'd even put fake news on a bingo card.
Some of Armenian journalists in Russia, and that was put in Russian press, but he never said that. And this is absolutely true. What committed the genocide in Khojaly, their names are well known. There have been local Armenians, Armenians from Armenia, and Armenians from diaspora. And the names of these people are well known, and many books and international articles were published about that. Therefore, to say that Azerbaijanis themselves brutally killed 63 children, 100 women, and 1,000 people are still missing is a peak of cynicism. With respect to what international community should do, I think the most important is that international community, and when we talk about international community, we talk primarily about OSCE Minsk Group co-chairs efforts. They should at last very clearly explain to Armenian side that Nagorno-Karabakh is not Armenia, that Nagorno-Karabakh is not independent country. No one recognizes this illegal entity. So this is number one. The second.
Okay, so what he just said is kind of what the Prime Minister was saying earlier, is it's an autonomous zone. It wanted to be its own country when the Soviet Union collapsed. And he's like, well, nobody in the international community recognizes it, which is true. But at the same time, it doesn't defeat the argument from the Armenian Prime Minister that it wanted to be its own as soon as the Soviet Union collapsed. So as you can kind of see, it's kind of the back and forth, and it's tough to pick out because they're not speaking to each other. They're speaking to us. They're talking right over one another. This isn't a negotiation between, it's kind of a debate where they're trying to sway the audience to their side.
I think there should be more international pressure on Armenia in order to implement resolutions of Security Council, because there is no higher international body than Security Council of United Nations, and they adopted 4 resolutions. It's easy to check. The numbers of these resolutions are known to specialists. What it says Armenian troops should immediately and unconditionally withdraw from the occupied territories. Not only Nagorno-Karabakh is occupied, but 7 districts surrounding it. Armenia wants to hide it. 7 districts where Armenians never lived. In the last Soviet census of 1989, the population of Nagorno-Karabakh was identified as 189,000 people, out of which 139,000 Armenians, 48,000 Azerbaijanis, and some other representatives of other people. So all Azerbaijanis were ethnically cleansed from Nagorno-Karabakh and from our ancient city of Shusha. Then all Azerbaijanis were ethnically cleansed from 7 districts. They committed a genocide against our people, against our culture. They destroyed our mosques. They destroyed our graves. They changed the name of our cities. They now publish the map of Nagorno-Karabakh, which consists of all the occupied territories. And then they say that we should agree with these realities. Therefore, international community should explain first that Nagorno-Karabakh is Azerbaijan, and second, put a serious pressure on aggressor to stop. Prime Minister, just one minute. Okay. Prime Minister just said about peace. Okay, I agree. But how it correlates with what happened today on the line of contact when Azerbaijani soldier was killed by Armenian sniper?
Ooh. That was a jab that he just threw a haymaker right there at the end. He's been very well prepared in what he is going to say. He's probably had this argument or this debate a bunch of times. And you kind of feel bad for the Armenian guy because he's kind of there in the corner. He tried taking some shots back, but he just destructed everything he said and then stated, well, the international community should roll with us because they've already stated that they should agree with Azerbaijan. And so I don't agree with all his like genocide talk, destroying a mosque and stuff. Yes, cultural genocide. But as far as like committing like a genocide, most of the people other than Kujale were able to get out of those regions. But at the same time, there were the Armenians in Azerbaijan that had to get out of Azerbaijan. So nobody's hands are really clean as far as the cultural genocide. Now, Azerbaijan does have like 1% Christians, so they do have a Christian community. They have a small minority Jewish community. They're a little bit more secular than Armenia is. Armenia is a Christian country. Like you said, 97% of the people in Armenia are Armenian. So, but Azerbaijan's really not that much better. 90% is Azerbaijani. So, but yeah, that was very good. Like I said, his command of the English language is a lot better than the Armenian prime minister's, which is probably one of the reasons why this debate may not happen again until the Armenian prime minister develops his English a little bit more.
So I think the elements of the challenge are clear to everyone. There's a complicated history, territory that has been part of different political entities over time, the human tragedy of refugees and those killed on both sides, a ceasefire that is not held for the time, for a period of time enough to create trust and a basis for moving forward on a political negotiation. So I'd welcome some questions on some of these issues. How about, so I want to move to the questions, and I'm guessing that the questions will provide the opportunity for following up on several of those issues, if I may, because I do want to, I have my boss sitting right here, and I don't want to break the rules. We got to get to the questions. Thank you, sir. Yes, the first question with help. I have a microphone in the audience, I believe. Yes?
Kind of really kind of a poor moderator. The best thing to do would have been, well, my boss is in the stand, so I can't do it. Be like, all right, you have 15 seconds, hurry up. Throw out your concern real quick, 15 seconds, go. And then boom, it's done while they're trying to find the mic in the audience. He could have answered that question while they're trying to find the mic in the audience. Like, yeah, this kind of moderator, she might be new. Like, she just brought up her boss. But yeah, as a moderator, you kind of want to blend in with the back wall and just kind of pivot, go to the positions. I think she's talking a little bit much. She's obviously nervous, extremely nervous. Just look at her body language compared to the other two. The Azerbaijan president, his body language is relaxed. He knows what he's going to say. He's done this before. Her body language, she's nervous as shit. And then the Armenian prime minister, he's a little bit nervous. Like, you can just see him kind of tense and he's a little bit nervous, but nobody's as nervous as the moderator in this, and she shouldn't be. Nobody's questioning her. Nobody's judging her. They're judging what the two leaders have to say.
After I created the space for a question, now you're all going to fail me. Is this right? Because then I'll just turn back to Mr. Prime Minister, please. You can follow up.
Okay.
Okay, I will come to that question. Yeah, we'll come to that question. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
I would like to make several comments. First of all, on resolution of UN Security Council, there is no word Armenian troops. There is written local Armenian forces. That means that people of Nagorno-Karabakh formed self forces for self-defense, and there is no written Armenian troops. About victims, yes, it is tragedy, it is conflict, and thousands of people died as a result of that conflict. And both Armenian and Azerbaijanis, and this is fact. But personally, I read in the newspaper Argumenti I Fakti, the interview of former president of Azerbaijan. And I think we can find it easily in the internet on historical facts. There is a book, Nagorno-Karabakh, Legal Aspect, and what I said, you can find it there, and you can find it in the historical books. Names of city and about.
So I really dislike that in any debate. You know, the Azerbaijani president brought that up. He's like, you can easily Google this. And now he's like, you can easily Google the book. They should just be able to say, well, this is my source, this is what it says, versus like, well, this is the source, you can look it up for yourself. Like, it's a debate. You got to be able to articulate your argument back and forth without saying Google it. Like, Google it is not an argument. And both of them have used it. And so they both get minus points for using it if we're keeping score at home.
The ethnic cleanses. In Nagorno-Karabakh was the region of Shaumian, living with Armenian. Okay. There is a Shaumian. Let's. My opinion is Nagorno-Karabakh. Okay, but
We should get him some boxing gloves. Yeah, too bad he's not holding his mic up. You know, he's doing the courteous thing, having it down, you know, until he's ready to speak. You know, it's Curtis, the other one. But it would be interesting to see what he was actually saying because I couldn't really hear it in the debate. But yeah, let's see where this plays out. This is getting kind of interesting.
there is a region. There is a region, Shaumian, and in 1988 they lived 100% population of Armenians, and now there is no one Armenian. The name of Shaumian is changed into the Azerbaijani name. It is a difficult word to me, and President Aliyev said that today Azerbaijani soldier was killed, and I can say that today in the border of Kazakh, Armenia, and Azerbaijan, Armenian soldier was injured by the Azerbaijani snipers. And this is our mutual task. What to do? Stop this process.
Thank you. That's a good place to turn over. I am going to give you, Mr. President, the opportunity to answer the specific points you disagree with, and then we do have a questioner, so I don't want to miss that opportunity. Please.
Just comments, because once again, I came here to tell the truth. And once again, I tell, I don't know what was written in Argumenti Fakti. Argumenti Fakti is a newspaper, it's an independent newspaper where many Armenians work. And we in Azerbaijan know the number of Armenians who run the leading Russian press, so they can write whatever they want. Therefore, I refer to the official statement of the former president of Azerbaijan, Ayaz Mutalibov, who said that he never said that. So now look, the former president, his words, and the words of one pro-Armenian or Armenian journalist, which has more value. This is first thing. About
I don't think either one of them have value, actually. It's just kind of a he said, she said kind of thing. I don't think either one of them weigh any more than the other one. So, which one has more value? Neither of them.
Showman, Mr. Prime Minister was just pointing that it was Stalin who made a decision to give Nagorno-Karabakh to Azerbaijan, which is wrong because, again, look at the Caucasus Bureau, July 1921, when it is said to retain Nagorno-Karabakh in Azerbaijan and not to transfer it to Azerbaijan. But if he doesn't like Stalin so much, it's strange why he likes so much Shaumian, because Shaumian was one of the Bolsheviks. It was a person who killed innocent Azerbaijanis. And today's so-called capital of Nagorno-Karabakh is named after his name. The question, if Nagorno-Karabakh is an ancient Armenian territory, why doesn't it have the ancient Armenian name for the capital? Because the ancient name for the capital is Khan Kandi, the village of the Khan. And the Stepanakert, because Shaumian's name was Stepan, Kert means city. That's right, in Armenia. Stepanakert was named in the name of that Bolshevik. So that once again proves that there was no Armenian historical legacy on those territories. And coming back to from where
It's kind of a shit argument. It doesn't prove what he thinks it proves. But then again, Armenians use the same argument, like it was the land before here. They're arguing through like a historical contents. I think he'd be better if he just went off of recent history rather than diving back into this historical thing. Just go off of recent history and just say, well, here it is. The United Nations is here. Do you disagree with the United Nations point of view? Like, rather than like, well, historical, because then it becomes he said, she said. And like I said, the territories have exchanged hands so many times. Like, yeah, there's Armenia possessed it, Azerbaijan possessed it, the Turks possessed it, the Russians possessed it, the Persians possessed it. Like, yeah, depending on how far you go back, Byzantines probably possessed it as well. Like, it's one of those things, like, there's not really a good argument there. Both sides go do this thing where they go back in history and snip out little parts and say it's here, it's there. But there's really no weight because it's something that you can snippet parts out of it, but there's nobody who has like native grounds to this land. And that's pretty much the way it is all over the world. Like, there's very few people who started where they're at and have been where they're at without being conquered by somebody else.
I began, this historical issue is important for understanding how the conflict should be resolved.
Thank you, sir. I hope everyone's taking notes because we're getting a history lesson here with multiple dimensions. We do have a question, please. And if you would identify yourself as you answer, so we know whom we're speaking.
Thank you very much. My name is Florian Kriener. I am a research fellow with the Max Planck Institute for International Law. And President Aliyev already mentioned the role of international law. My question would be to both, would you submit this dispute to the International Court of Justice via special agreement?
Mr. President, may I ask you to address the question first?
Azerbaijan is committed to the negotiation process. Therefore, we did not lose hopes that by negotiations we will be able to restore our territorial integrity. Therefore, when still we have these hopes, probably that will not be the best choice. But if, as a result of the new approach from Armenian side, the negotiations will be completely disrupted, then, of course, this option can be considered.
Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister?
We also devoted to the negotiation process.
So, pretty much what he's saying is only if the negotiation process works in our favor do we care about it, is kind of what I got out of that. Like, if it works out in our favor, we're going to be perfectly okay with it. And I imagine Armenia is going to reply with the same thing, but we'll see.
This process, as I said, and I think that negotiation should take place in the format of OSCE Minsk Group co-chairmanship, and we are working very intensively. And as I said, we are ready to put real efforts to make real difference and to reach to the solution of conflict. But nobody asked me about many revolutions that I've met in negotiation process. I hope I will have opportunity.
I am asking you to
Yeah.
please explain. I'm asking him
About
to explain.
revolutions,
Mini
No,
that's not what I
mini
want to hear.
revolutions. I'm asking
you
you
know,
to explain your mini. and
you
then-
know, my conceptual perception.
Revolution. The Azerbaijan president is like, that's not what I want to hear. Because Azerbaijan is a little out of bit of a dictatorship. So he does not want a revolution. Now, both these countries, as in like former Soviet republics, are ran a lot of times by like a gang or mafia type group. And so a lot of times it takes a strong armed dictator to be in control of the mafia so it doesn't turn into kind of a puppet state for the mafia. And so I get what he's saying about the revolution. I think that Arab Spring revolution scared a lot of these authoritarian governments in the Caucasus and the Middle East and also Asia as well. Seeing what happened in Syria, seeing what happened in Yemen, I think it scares a lot of leaders of a lot of countries who do not want to lose power. That could be Iran, Azerbaijan, even to a certain level, Armenia as well. Even Armenia had the Velvet Revolution. Armenia is still a corrupt country. So, yeah, I think they want to tread lightly, or at least Azerbaijan does in this, as far as the revolution, because, yeah, Turkey's another one. These leaders do not want to lose power in this.
Is that, as I said already, it isn't possible just solve this long-lasting conflict with 1-2 step. We need, why I'm saying micro revolution, because I think that we need to have micro revolution conditionally to transform it into mini revolution, and after that to have real breakthrough in negotiation process. What was the micro revolution in the September of?
So he is speaking a lot better. So he might have explained this topic before, but yeah, he's speaking really well now. He's coming out, he is speaking his mind, his English has gotten a little bit better, and he is doing really well trying to convey this point. And I think it's a good point that he's tried to convey to some of Europe and other Western governments, because Armenia really doesn't have a lot of friends. So Russia has technically been their only friend throughout, but Russia also does business with Azerbaijan. So Greece claimed their allegiance to Armenia only because Turkey claimed their allegiance to Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan also has Israel's support, which is a really interesting dynamic, because if Israel didn't support Azerbaijan, Iran would. But Iran's calling for peace because Iran actually has Azerbaijanis and Armenians living in peace in the country. So I think Iran wants to de-escalate. Russia wants to de-escalate. The United States really doesn't care. Turkey wants to wipe out all Armenians off the face of the planet, or support Azerbaijan, whichever comes first. So there's that dynamic. But the Israel dynamic I find really interesting, that Israel and Azerbaijan are extremely friendly with one another, and it probably has to do with Israel wanting to attack Iran. But Azerbaijan's one of the most interesting countries because they have good relations with Iran, Israel, Turkey, Russia, the United States, India, Pakistan. They're friends with everybody except for Armenia. At least on some level, some better than others, but yeah. They're really interesting. And then Armenia sitting there is like, well, Russia, our best friend, is also friends with our enemy. And then Greece is only supporting us because they hate Turkey. Armenia needs to make a ploy to get more friends, which is one of the reasons they're trying to evolve and trying to curtail to Europe and the West, because they need more friends. because Azerbaijan's done a way better job at making friends in the world than Armenia has.
Of 2018, I announced that any solution of Nagorno-Karabakh conflict should be acceptable for people of Armenia, for people of Karabakh, and for people of Azerbaijan. And why this is micro-revolution? Because I'm first Armenian leader saying that any solution should be acceptable for Azerbaijani people as well. And but now after more than 1 year after that revolution, I'm not only leader of Armenia, but I'm only leader Azerbaijan and Armenia that's saying that any solution should be acceptable for all sides. It is very important micro revolution. Another revolution, I in my one of the during one of the my press conference, I called to users of social media, Azerbaijani and Armenian users of social media, not to use social media to offend each other, to threaten each other, and to insult each other, but use social media, new technologies for trying to understand each other better. And it is another way, and I think that we should, and I tried to address address directly to the Azerbaijani people, and if President Aliyev don't mind, and I don't mind that President Aliyev would speak with Armenian people. But we have very strange fact. President Aliyev is refusing to speak to representatives of Nagorno-Karabakh, and it is very strange fact. How it is possible to solve Nagorno-Karabakh conflict without speaking with the representatives of Nagorno-Karabakh? By the way, Nagorno-Karabakh was recognized as a party of conflict and party of negotiation by the OSCE, and this happened twice in 24 March of 1992 and in 1994 in Budapest OSCE summit.
Thank you. So let me.
So that was the best point he's made so far. As far as the de-escalation, he brought up social media. You know, the part at the end almost derailed the whole thing he was saying, but that was the best point he's brought up so far. He was very confident. He was very clear in what he was trying to direct until, like I said, the very end, he kind of tailored off a little bit. But yeah, that was the best point. That was the best he performed here in this debate, coming here at the end.
President Aliyev, what do you think of the three proposed micro-revolutions to seek the views of Azerbaijani citizens who've suffered from the war, Armenian citizens and the residents of Nagorno-Karabakh, and I assume also the occupied territories you would want to, including refugees from those occupied territories you would want to include, and the idea of social media not being, we've heard a lot about this today, exacerbating force for hostility among the peoples, and the idea of being able to welcome speaking to one another's citizens honestly.
You know, during my experience of negotiation with Armenian leaders, I had this opportunity with two predecessors of Mr. Pashinyan. Always in the very decisive moment of negotiations, they found some excuse in order not to continue. Otherwise, to put it, all of them wanted to keep status quo unchanged, but all of them tried to do it differently. Now, when Prime Minister Pashinyan talks about his proposal that the resolution must be accepted to the people of Azerbaijan, I answered to that. And I said, what is acceptable to the people of Azerbaijan? People of Azerbaijan, those who suffer from Armenian aggression, want to go back to their homes. This is their fundamental right. They're deprived from this right for almost 30 years because Armenian leadership. It is not Nagorno-Karabakh. And when Prime Minister talks about so-called self-defense forces of Nagorno-Karabakh, again he's telling thing which is not true. Because he knows very well, and I know, that more than 80% of so-called Nagorno-Karabakh army are citizens of Armenia. And this is true, maybe even more than 80%. Therefore, there is no Nagorno-Karabakh army. There is no Nagorno.
So that's untrue. So Nagorno-Karabakh has its own army. Now, I don't know what the percentage are actually Armenian citizens, but they do have their own army. Now, it's tough to gauge numbers because it's in the mountains. It's a hospitable region, but they do have their own army. Now, I would venture to guess that some of it is supplied by Armenia as well, which is why the Armenia solution wants to basically do a North and South Armenia. But to say that there's no army there is false.
Karabakh Republic. And the only two parties to the conflict, Armenia and Azerbaijan. Ask OSCE Minsk co-chairs, who are the parties to the conflict? They will say the same, Armenia and Azerbaijan. Nagorno-Karabakh is not. Why it is not? It is other question, but it is not, and we are not going to talk to them. We are talking to aggressor. We are ready to talk to Nagorno-Karabakh in case Armenia stops funding this illegal entity, Armenia pulls back all their military troops from Nagorno-Karabakh, and completely withdraws from our territory. And then we will have, arguments to talk to these people. But until they are there, no way. And they want to keep status quo unchanged. They think that they can keep these territories under occupation forever. And I'm sure that that will not be the case, and our territorial integrity must be restored.
So, yeah. So that's Azerbaijan's side of things. It's Armenia's helping these rebels arm our territory, and we want it back. Every time we try to negotiate, they throw a wrench in the negotiation process with their kind of puppet state in Nagorno Karabakh. So that's a good descriptor. So Azerbaijan's not going to give an inch. And Armenia is trying to come out a little bit more diplomatic, saying, well, it should be up to the people. Well, that's not going to sit well with Azerbaijan because Armenia kicked all their people out. So, of course, it's going to be an Armenian, like South Armenia, because there's no Azerbaijani representation there.
Coming to the second part, we had exchange of journalists recently, and I think that was an experience which we need to evaluate. We need to evaluate its positive and negative side, because part of society in Armenia and in Azerbaijan was not very supportive to that format. But that was a decision by two leaders to try. We want to try every opportunity to find a peaceful settlement, to persuade Armenian people that they cannot live like that forever. They need to find solution with us and live in the future in peace as neighbors.
Well, I appreciate you reporting that constructive step, or that attempt at a constructive attempt, because that's the spirit we want to support.
She is still bothering me. Still. What she should have done, be like, well, thank you. All right, next question. Rather than interjecting. It's the same thing if you watch ESPN First Take with Molly Querim. Like, she just interjects herself in the conversation. It's like, well, it's supposed to be a debate between the two leaders. We don't know who she is. We know the two leaders of the two countries. We don't know who she is. She used to say as little as possible and just direct the conversation between the two parties or the questions being asked without interjecting so much.
We have time for maybe one more question and some closing remarks. Is there another question from the floor? Yes.
Thanks a lot. My name is Elena Chernenko. I'm a Russian journalist from the Kommersant newspaper and the Munich Young Leader of 2015. Russia is one of the countries that is trying to bring about a solution within the OSCE process. And as far as I understand, one of the proposals was maybe leaving the status question for later and trying to do something that maybe the sides can more eagerly agree about, for example, about those districts around Nagorno-Karabakh, creating a corridor and other steps. So do you see any chances for an interim solution that would leave the status question for later and resolve maybe some of the other things? Thank you.
President Aliyev, do you have thoughts on the question?
Yes, I think this is possible, and this proposal was seriously considered by Azerbaijan, and in general, we gave our agreement to that. That's the most reasonable thing to do because it's clear that we need to resolve this conflict in phases. We cannot resolve it one and completely in one day. It should be put in phases, and the first phase should be, and as the journalist said in Russian proposal, liberation of part of the occupied territories, return of Azerbaijani IDPs to those territories, resettlement of that territory. In the meantime, the process of normalization of relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and the status of Nagorno-Karabakh to be discussed later when both sides are ready. Because without the process on the ground, without beginning of liberation of the territories, it will be not possible to agree on the status. Our position is a status must not interfere with territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. At the same time, we always were saying that Azerbaijan is a multi-confessional and multinational country. There are many national minorities in Azerbaijan who live in peace and dignity. And when our territorial integrity is fully restored, Armenians as national minority will enjoy all the rights and privileges as any other representative of any other nation in our country.
Thank you, President Aliyev. Step by step sounds like your own micro-revolution, so I like this theme.
And by the way, we have one mutual mini revolution. I hope I will have opportunity to tell
Please,
about that.
you have the floor.
Yeah. And when we first met in Dushanbe, in capital of Tajikistan, after that we with President Aliyev made a little mini revolution because after that meeting, the tension after that meeting in general reduced unprecedentedly, and we've been able to create direct line for contact and information. And I should accept that in that case, President Aliyev is co-author with me. As far as President Aliyev is saying territories, and from point of view and in perception of Azerbaijan, these are territories. But from point of view of Karabakh, this is security, because we need to understand why current status quo emerged. Because when Nagorno-Karabakh tried to use its right for self-determination, military actions started against Armenia of Nagorno-Karabakh. And Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh were forced to organize self-defense. President Aliyev was speaking on Shushi, and the
So that is something I did not expect to see, because the Armenians, the prime minister throughout this whole process, has been kind of more diplomatic, saying, almost yes to like all negotiations and process. And as soon as this proposal is proposed, he is against it, which is incredibly interesting. Because it kind of changes the deck. Because earlier, yeah, we want to stay with this diplomatic process, but as soon as something's meant to like change and try to bring peace, he's against it. So I think a little bit from the Azerbaijani president, like they want to keep the status quo. I think that's coming out. He doesn't want anything to change. But that's just my view and my take from what I'm hearing.
Capital of Nagorno-Karabakh, Stepanakert,
within years was bombed from Shushi, and peaceful citizens, they are living in underground for many long time. And this is the truth. It isn't, it isn't possible to give up security for anyone, and for Karabakh as well. President Aliyev mentioned military forces of Azerbaijan. My son is passing its military service in Nagorno-Karabakh, but he went there as a voluntarily to defend.
So that is an extremely poor argument from what he stated earlier. He stated that the Armenians didn't have any military presence, that Nagorno-Karabakh was its own military, and now he's stating his own sons there voluntarily fighting. It's not a good look. Not a real great way to attack kind of this argument here if you want them to remain autonomous when you just admitted that you were supporting them and your own sons there, whether voluntarily or not. You just admitted one of your earlier arguments was false.
His compatriot, because he knows history, what happened from 1998. And I already said about the Shaumian region with 100% of Armenian population, but now there live no one Armenian. And we know the case of Nakhichevan with huge Armenian population, and it is an autonomous republic in the Azerbaijan, and now there is no one Armenia. And one more sentence. President Aliyev is saying that Nagorno-Karabakh isn't a part of negotiation and the conflict. But Azerbaijan twice signed agreement with Nagorno-Karabakh. First, it was in 1994, and it was ceasefire agreement between Armenia, Nagorno-Karabakh, and Azerbaijan, and ministers of defense signed that. And after 3 months, in July of 1994, they confirmed that the ceasefire would be kept until the political resolution of that conflict.
So that once again was a really good argument. Really good argument, bringing up that, well, Azerbaijan said that Nagorno-Karabakh, they don't negotiate when they did negotiate with them in the recent history of the past. So that was definitely a zinger in this that he brought up.
So we are at the end of our session. I think that I would like to express my gratitude to President Aliyev and to Prime Minister Pashinyan for their extraordinary knowledge, their extraordinary passion. I think it is clear that both of these leaders care very deeply about resolving the conflict, but care very deeply about how the conflict will be resolved. And we cannot expect less. I also think, in addition to the fact that we heard the full scope of the challenge and the dynamics of the challenge and the elements of the challenge, we also, and I'm grateful to both of you, heard elements of what the opportunities could also be for a way forward in improving the lives of those affected by the conflict, and maybe through micro steps or micro revolutions, beginning a constructive process of finding a peaceful resolution. So we are extraordinarily lucky at this historic opportunity here at the Munich Security Conference. And let us thank, please, President Aliyev and Prime Minister Pashinyan for sharing their thoughts with us. Please.
All right. So that was the debate, the conflict, and just some overall thoughts. I thought the Prime Minister really struggled with English. He needs to work on that if he's going to court Western countries. Because watching this debate, it was obvious the president from Azerbaijan was the lot better speaker. Now, the prime minister from Armenia did make some really great points, as well as the president from Azerbaijan. And you can kind of see how this conflict's going to be frozen in time for some point. And like you said at the start, I'd really like to find some people either from the Armenian side of things or the Azerbaijan side of things to just talk about it and discuss the conflict in their eyes. You know, some of the people on the ground, not necessarily the leaders. The last video I did was with some of the public speaking people from each country, and now I did a video of the president. But I'd love to find people on each side of the aisle and just discuss with them, get their viewpoint as a citizen from the country. So if you are that person or you're interested, my Twitter handle is Jaeger de Pato or Jaeger de Pato, depending on whether you say it in Spanish or Spanglish. So but I appreciate everybody who tuned in and watched. And until the next time, I imagine it'll probably be another video on Armenia and Azerbaijan, because this conflict, even though it's kind of frozen, is extremely interesting because there's a lot of moving parts in it. So thank you again and have a good night.